walks in, yeah. Yes. Alrighty, so welcome to a very special and unique piece of content, I think, at this TechChill. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things related to Web3 and the creator economy and how artists are leveraging all that stuff. Before we get into the introductions, definitions, that conversation, so Team Kiwi, which is a whole bunch of different people. There you go. That's very useful.
Yep.
And so Arturs and I are going to have a conversation while the chair is being transformed. So before we get into the content, maybe just let us know what we're experiencing here, and then we'll get into our topic.
Yeah, so my name's Arthur. This is Kiwi, the artist. I'm more of a caretaker, zookeeper for this guy and all his creations. And so right now he's going to be, well, he wanted to make a painting, but yesterday he decided that Illuminati owns the paper industry, so now he only paints on the furniture. And so today he's going to present some sort of a design that I don't even know about yet, so I guess we'll see.
Excellent. So a little context as to why I'm maybe having this conversation with you as well. So the CryptoAssets Institute is an advisory. I work with brands and corporates and funds around issues related to the blockchain economy and specifically Web3. And I'm one of the co-founders of the NFT Factory in Paris, which is a 400 square meter physical digital art gallery. So 70 screens across the street from Centre Pompidou, which is the largest contemporary art museum in the world. And it serves as kind of the ecosystem hub for everything Web3 in France and more so in Western Europe, founded by people from Ledger, So Rare, The Sandbox, Artifact, Obvious, a whole bunch of digital artists, and others. We're 128 co-founders, and so the idea of the concept of digital art as it relates to Web3 is very dear to me, but also where Web3 is interacting with so many other things, both in the marketing world and very specifically for creators of all types. And so that's the conversation I was thinking we could have today, is really this creator economy idea. But because that title's loaded with keywords, maybe we should spend some time on definitions. So what, from your perspective, is Web3? What does that mean to you?
So Web3 for me is, I'd say, the decentralization of ownership of whatever ownership it is, and perhaps not just ownership, but also the kind of, let me try to phrase that well.
I think that's a good start.
Yeah, decentralization of ownership, but also you being able to take ownership of your data. And one of these examples kind of here what I like to mention to kind of understand how it could work in the real world. Let's say if there's always been a lot of, fuss around people trying to create the next big social network and kind of saying, hey, kind of all the data or algorithms that are in the social media, you don't know really how they work, right? And all the data belongs to the company. And one good example, what I would believe could show one definition of Web3 is a social network where all the connections that you own with people, let's say, right, and all the data you have, that one day if you decide you want to change your service provider, your social network, you can take this data with you. For musicians, that would be, let's say, if on Spotify you have millions of followers, and then one day you have a fallout with Spotify, that you're able to take all this information and, let's say, all the playlist names, all the keywords, all the data that your music has generated, and that you're able to take this data to another platform. That's kind of one of the hands-on examples for me for Web3.
And so we'll get into some of the things about NFTs and well, social tokens and DAOs, maybe some of these other things we can talk about, but then that really connects us to then the definition of what for you is the creator economy, because you mentioned all of these platforms. And so obviously as an artistic collective, there's a definition there for you, but where do you see this creator economy at today?
So that's a term I'm not an expert on whatsoever. I've heard it thrown around mostly, not thrown around, but used mostly, let's say, in relation to YouTube, surprisingly, with a lot of creators there taking kind of the next bigger steps, going beyond, expanding into other industries. Let's say we're creators whose brand or whose product is based on their likeness, on their name, where they use that to then expand into other audiences in other industries and so on with different products and so on. And so there's a couple very kind of big examples we probably heard of on YouTube, right, of, let's say, Mr. Beast, Logan Paul, other kind of these creators, and who have gone out there and instead of just creating, let's say, a merch line that they went through, they start using their likeness and creating businesses for people to diversify their, let's say, actions.
Yeah, that YouTube is definitely a great example of that. So the creator economy for me is very much this idea of people that are sharing their experience and sharing their knowledge through whatever form of media that happens to be today. But YouTube is a great example. Even stuff on Insta and TikTok, not necessarily the more silly entertainment side, but maybe just a lot of the, although that's very much the creator economy as well, but just this idea of sharing what you understand as a subject matter, what you're an expert at. We see that also then on things like Substack, which is a platform where you can read newsletters now where there are more professional journalists writing a newsletter on Substack than now actually work for who they used to work for, like the New York Times or the Washington Post or anything like that, because they're able to go to a platform like that and reach a larger audience with more of an independent thing. You have things like podcasters, bloggers, anybody who is basically taking a knowledge or experience that they have and turning it into content. Who here creates any content online as one of those things? YouTube, Insta, a newsletter, podcasts, things like that. Okay, very good. So the idea here is that this marriage of Web3 and all of you as content creators is creating a tremendously interesting future of how to build a couple different things. One is build community through Web3, and the other is the monetization of some of that. And so maybe just to come back to that Web3 idea, and I don't know about the front row, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be super high by the time this thing is over because I've got like a crap load of, I don't know if you can see us, it's like a pink haze.
That's why I stumbled at the beginning because I smelled the
it's an interactive experience. We're really in the art. So then how does that really, if we look at Web3, let's talk about one of the tools then that artists and creators are using to build community and to monetize today, which is NFTs. So obviously here, everybody's heard of an NFT. Who here has actually bought or minted, as the word is, or things like that, any NFTs? Okay, so some of you, very good. So for those people, keep your hands raised if you've bought or minted anything that's an NFT. Keep your hand raised if it's digital art and not just like monkey JPEGs. Okay, very good. So a lot of you. Not that I have any problem with monkey JPEGs, but there are definitely that side of NFTs where it's animals or whatever kind of thing that a community is building themselves around, and then actually artists who have been creating digital art for decades, or artists who create physical art in some way that are making it digital. For you, the NFT thing, how does that play into the artist experience and even the experience we're seeing here today, or just in general?
So for us, it began in early 2020. Honestly, when for the first time, or maybe not specifically the first time, but the first time, the term NFT kind of went into public a little bit. And it began with, and still is ongoing with, a collection that we call Kiwie 1001, whose idea is pretty simple, just bringing ownership to street art. And the concept of it is that the artist, Kiwie, and our team, we travel to other different various destinations around the world and paint a set of artworks in the place. And so the idea there was that when an artwork is painted on a street, there's a big chance and a big risk that it's going to disappear at some point, whether somebody's going to take down the building or paint over or whatever else. And also the other part of this, that no one ever could own, let's say, street artworks unless there was this case with Banksy painting something over a building and then the owner actually taking out the bricks. So unless you do that, you cannot actually own a piece of street art. And we used NFTs really just as a digital proof, right, of ownership, so that when the artwork went on sale, the person could purchase it, and then the artwork would be embedded with the coordinates and with the visual. And one of the cool kind of ideas there was that when and if the artwork gets destroyed in the real world, the NFT itself would turn into a ghost. But so that was kind of the first concept. It was pretty simple, and that was at the very beginning. Since then, we've kind of learned a lot, and we moved on to become kind of a Web3 savvy creative studio where we work both with consumer brands and, let's say, in Web3 gaming, and with various projects helping them understand the world and how communities are built and where the value for NFT comes. And if you want to kind of touch upon specifically about artists, one way how I like to think about what blockchain and NFTs and Web3 has done to artists, to visual artists, is what Spotify did to musicians back in the day. Because up until we had music streaming, of course, you could buy single records, but streaming is really what brought music into the digital realm. And up until before Web3, artists only had the physical realm, right? Of course, you could sell prints, on Etsy or whatever, or even have your own agency with design. But individual artists didn't have, a solid framework to bring their art out there and earn a living from it. And so we believe that kind of the NFTs have opened these doors for visual artists.
So maybe then just to also talk a little bit some definitions, because I think it does help, or some of the uses, because we throw NFT around a lot, and without getting into the technical thing, why does that bring value to some of the stuff we're talking about? NFT stands for non-fungible token. You don't have to get into the crypto of this or the blockchain of this. It's not important, but the two words matter. The two pieces of that matter. The token aspect is just a way that we define within crypto subjects a single unit of something. So a single asset, so a painting or this chair as a single unit. In the currency part of crypto, we talk about coins, but that doesn't really fit when we're talking about other subjects, so we use the word token. So it just means an individual thing. But the non-fungible part is super important, because non-fungible just means unique. It means there is only one of that thing. And so NFT is simply a way to say that that thing we're talking about, that picture that you've seen on Twitter that somebody owns, or a painting that's in a gallery that has a digital representative, a digital twin, or some of the other things that we can talk about, that NFT is the proof of that uniqueness. It's a digital proof of uniqueness, and it does two main things which are really valuable. One is it provides proof of authenticity. It means that that thing you're talking about, art, it could be an expensive watch, it could be a luxury item, it could be something like a pair of sneakers, it could be your diploma for school. There are going to be NFTs within the next couple of years. Schools are already laying this out there. Your house title, your car registration, all of these things that point to identifying an asset in a way that provides authenticity, the thing is real, and second thing, proof of ownership, that it belongs to you. These two things are what create all the magic and why people are super excited about NFTs. The people in Web3 and in the creator economy that are excited about NFTs are not excited because of Bored Apes or other things that you may have heard of, or people spending way too much money on certain animals online that maybe, we can have a discussion about all of that kind of things. That's actually not where this is going for it to be so interesting for artists in that. It is art. That is a kind of art within the digital art space. But we have so much in there that's interesting. You mentioned with brands and things, supply chain and logistics, being able to say that a product is unique and that it's the real thing and that it's coming from where it's supposed to and it belongs to this person. Your digital identity, the way you communicate to the world, the things you care about because your digital wallet will hold those. There's so many spaces in identity and in video games and in this digital twin aspect of physical things having a digital counterpart. That's where NFTs can bring this. Where does that connect to you with everything in art?
So kind of to add a little bit on top of that, because at the beginning when I tried explaining it to people, or even myself at first, kind of the first thought, okay, you can prove ownership of something digital in, online, but how does that help me in the real world? And kind of one good example, how I like to maybe frame it, is that NFTs and blockchain and Web3, that they're not gonna, solve huge world problems, but they can make a lot of problem solving hell of a lot more effective and quick. And so one example, let's say what you mentioned about real estate, that let's say today, the only reason why you can say that you own a certain property is because there's an institution, probably a government one, somewhere in the office that has a huge archive, whether digital or physical, of, the records that, hey, this person has purchased this home, you're declared there or whatnot. And then it's like, okay, let's say what happens if the office burns down or the servers burn down. And then you say, well, okay, now we have blockchain. It's maybe a step more where if that proof lies as an NFT, and let's say the wallet on which the NFT is tied to your identity, so there's actual, that it's not anonymous, that you actually have your ID and name and passport tied to a certain wallet. And, then transferring ownership of a property goes from having to go to notary and banks and all of this and that, to you just pushing one button and the record being transferred. And it is kind of objectively safer because, it's the same database where the record is hosted, but it's kind of all around the world. And then, of course, some people say, well, what happens if a solar flare comes and kills your blockchain? Well, if the solar flare comes, then we're going to have a lot of more problems than just, proving who owns which house.
Yeah, all the technical questions, what gets really interesting in that is definitely that we're seeing an evolution of that's kind of going outside the subject of we're not going to get too technical, but Web3 and the blockchain economy in general creates something called the trust authority. So you already trust things like land title, the people who know who owns what houses, or you trust the justice system in terms of that courts say this, or that you have laws that make this happen, we have taxes. We have all these different intermediaries that we trust in order for transactions to happen. The financial system is a major one of those. And so the blockchain is basically looking at that in a way of what if those trust authorities are no longer human, they're algorithms. And so that's why it's all around transactions, why it started with currency and money, but why it's also things about all the different kinds of value, whether it's art or physical products or different things that we can transfer those. So let's switch gears then and talk a little bit about one of the major reasons this is so important to the creator economy. And that's because when you have these digital assets that can have a visual component, because an NFT is not the image. The image that you see when you look at digital art, that's not the NFT. The NFT is the technology behind that image that is creating that proof of authenticity and proof of ownership. Because if it's a song, or if it is a piece of real estate, or if it is your diploma for school, or something like a physical product, you may have a visual component to that, but the NFT value is really that all those things tied to ownership and authenticity. That becomes super cool for creators. Why? Because then you can either give or sell these NFTs as a way to basically be a member of a community. It's a way for brands and for creators to create engagement and build community. So how do you see NFTs and Web3 in general being used for community building and engagement in the art world?
Yeah, well, we think that Web3 and NFTs are still trying to find the specific lanes of let's say, their purpose and how they should be used, because, the first thing we heard is, again, pictures of monkeys, yada this, yada that. Same as with, cryptocurrency. First thing people did is effectively used NFTs as a fundraising tool. And, there's nothing wrong about that if you have a proper structure around it and accountability around it. Because all the problems, all the, scamming and so on, it comes from lack of accountability. Because crypto world is still kind of like a little bit of a Wild West, where person on the internet, they can be anonymous, but if they have certain reputation, or if just the timing is good or the idea is good, then, they can just succeed without people actually ever having to know who they are. Because with NFTs, the product is the fundraising tool. You sell the product and you raise money that way. But there's other, as you mentioned, a lot of other ways to look at it. In the framework of a creator economy, we, of course, seen a bunch of people, a bunch of celebrities during the last kind of big cycle come out with their own products, their NFTs, and failing miserably, and, lawsuits flying and this and that. But one way how we could look at NFTs in this context without kind of, them seeming overly, let's say, risky or scammy, is if we think about NFTs just as another item of merchandise, right? So you have physical merchandise, which is T-shirts, whatever it is, and then you can have digital merchandise, right? And why would a person buy, a digital merchandise or a physical one? First of all, the supply. Of course, you can make it fixed or you can make it unlimited. But the fact is, even I have some, let's say, creator T-shirts at home that I never wear because it's not just something that I wear, but I bought them because I support the creator. And so I could as well, if I don't like cluttering my house, I could buy their digital collectible and it will hold the same value to me as a T-shirt. And there's an added benefit of it never going away, right? So that's kind of one way to look at it. And then the benefits that you have with the community, with access, of course, kind of in theory, you could do the same with an email, right? You could sign up on Substack because you can, there's Braintree and a bunch of these different kind of tools that you can use to monetize your digital work. But NFTs are just a new way, and people like newness. And, there's certain kind of objective benefits that you can talk about and discuss. But effectively, yeah, it's just another thing that you as a creator can publish, and there will be people who value it, because the reason not we, but maybe, some people value NFTs more than others is the same reason some people value Rolex watches than others, is because in your community, wherever you are, this thing is cool and you want to own it. You want to let everyone else and signal to everyone else that you're cool, let's say, or whatnot. So same thing with NFTs and, all these reasons why people put some value to a certain thing. They're all fundamentally the same, and it can be a physical thing and it can be a digital thing. We just have to make this mental step as a, let's say, society to kind of understand that you can now own digital things,
Yeah, and that is really it, because when we look at collectibles, because on one side NFTs can be in that digital collectible place if that's what we're looking at. And people collect all kinds of things. People collect Magic the Gathering cards or Pokemon cards. They collect comic books. They collect little porcelain figures of everything. Or everybody collects something. Lots of us don't want to admit what it is that we collect, but we all have seen those collections that people have of stuff. So you identify in your own way with things that have value and don't have value that people collect. And so that value is a bit subjective in these kind of things. But one of the reasons that community is so interesting with NFTs is because as a digital asset, we can do something with an NFT that's really fun, which is called token gating. So gating access to something through this token. And what that means is going onto a website for, imagine I could go to, like Breitling, for example, the watch company, all new Breitling watches come with an NFT that proves that it's an authentic Breitling. And if you go into a store and try and sell that watch, you can't sell it without the NFT because it's not real. They have to go together, and that will be very interesting when it comes to theft and other kinds of things in art and in luxury goods. But you can go to the Breitling website, and using your wallet, your digital wallet that holds that asset, that NFT, you can connect to the website. Like currently you connect with your email or your Google account or whatever. You can connect to the website as an ID because you have that NFT, and that lets you do things like schedule maintenance. You can have there's a private forum where you can potentially sell or trade those things between each other. So lots of projects, lots of the artists that use this stuff, they have a Discord server where they have their community around a Discord server. Well, Discord works really well with lots of tools around digital wallets, and so you can do things like give people special roles because they have a certain NFT. People can get a discount on merchandise. They can get free merchandise or free exclusivity, free VIP access. You're creating this proximity, this community, thanks to this tool, which because it's digital, is easy to kind of roam. I can go into a store, a New Balance store, and these shoes that came with an NFT, I can wear them in the metaverse, the same shoes. I can go into a New Balance store, and I can scan the QR code to my wallet, and they can go, oh, you have a New Balance NFT. We're going to give you 10% off today because it's a rewards program, and we identify you as a customer thanks to your NFTs. I can go next door to the Nike store. I can also scan my wallet, and they can say, you don't have any Nike NFTs, but you have New Balance. We're going to give you 10% off today in order for you to try some Nikes. Like, this is a huge fundamental shift in marketing and where things can go with that. It's a fascinating space, and that digital asset of this is really interesting. Before we switch to hear what you want to say, you can actually go out here. One of the booths that's out here is Planie's. It's Air Baltic, and their rewards program is being rebuilt around NFTs that provides you with miles, with points, even if you don't fly. Just owning the NFT, you get 20 miles a day. It's a super cool program they're working on to figure this stuff out. But your thoughts?
Yeah, so first thing is something that we observed working with a bunch of companies and brands is that in Web3, if you start a company, it's kind of there's still a huge lack of, let's say, structure and templates on how to build these things and build companies in Web3. But one thing that is true is that, let's say, if in the real world, you first have to create a product, a watch, shoes, and then you put the product out there and you build the community around the product. In Web3, it's the other way around. You have to find the people first, the community that's interested in a certain topic or an idea. You put them together and you basically have to sell them and make them believe before you even have a product, right? And so it's kind of putting the whole business and community thing on its head, which is interesting. We'll see how that turns out. But one good example that I like to bring up when, this conversation about loyalty comes up is, let's say I know a bunch of people who, when they travel, they make it their mission to go to a McDonald's wherever they are. So like they can travel to the other side of the world and they have to go to McDonald's just to compare it. And imagine now if McDonald's had also like an NFT program where you could go to a certain store, there would be a badge that you scan, and it would give you a digital collectible that's, associated with that specific branch of McDonald's. And now you can go around the world, collect them, and then you can feel a part of something bigger. And they can use that data, first of all, for PR to bring attention to these stories of how people travel and, this brand loyalship. Because it's insane. Like, if you had this data that, hey, there's an actual person who's been to 50 countries and they've came and bought a thing from me, that's very valuable data. And then they can reward those people, right? And, of course, you can try and figure out a way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You can, of course, try and figure out a way to do it with just email and, some tokens, some stamps, whatever. But the good part is that there's like an operating system behind all of this that unites all of these potential loyalty programs together. That you need only one tool, really, to kind of be able to tap into all of them.
Yeah, Starbucks. So as an example of a global brand like that, Starbucks is actually redesigning. They're currently testing their entire rewards program based around journey stamps. So they're not calling them NFTs to get away from the idea, but the idea is you already know how airline miles work if you've flown anywhere and you got miles for that trip. We're talking about the same stuff. We're just using different vocabulary because the technology has changed. Well, Starbucks has now redesigned their program and they're currently testing it around journeys. Your interactions with the brand that earn you these moments that reward you over time, and that is increasing that proximity between a brand and its customers, but also between creators and their community. It's the same thing, just the language changes or the idea changes, whether we're talking about brands or individuals as creators. But the idea of having proximity, having some kind of exclusivity and benefit because you are closer to a brand is super interesting. You mentioned Spotify, so maybe we'll close with a little bit of the music stuff before we finish here with the art. Music is a place where now the digital art was a big piece of the first movement with NFTs. Now we're seeing tons of stuff in music. Spotify is now doing NFT-gated playlists for artists, meaning that if you have one of their NFTs that you've either bought or that they've given you, airdropped you, as we'd say, or things like that, you would be able to connect to Spotify with that NFT and get access to what are basically private playlists, but they're private only if you don't have the NFT. And so you have access to that. Ticketmaster just rolled out a new program where people who have an NFT of an artist, imagine Taylor Swift, you want to go buy those tickets for that upcoming concert series. The first people in line, the people who get access to those tickets first, are people who have the NFT because they're part of the community of the artist. This radically changes the relationship between how we're selling stuff like concert tickets, how we're new music. Not that people will necessarily buy songs, but that we will, like you can do Spotify for free, but you pay for premium to get the added benefit. Well, you can stream the song for free, but if you buy for $5 the NFT of that song, maybe you get 5 different versions they were working on in the studio. Maybe you get a live version. Maybe you get some artwork. Maybe you get a video. All these things that can come with the fact that you have interacted even more with that creator. This is super exciting as a space. We're almost out of time. Any other thoughts you want to have on that subject and or more specifically on our chair that is almost done?
Yeah, I think we can...
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost done.
Good. Like music is interesting. I worked on one music project as well in this space. But there was though. Oh, you done?
Do you feel done?
Eh? What is that?
You have a mic.
Are we sure? Is it done? So what is this chair? What's its purpose? This is a gift to TechChill? Is that the idea?
That's the gift to TechChill, and I wish he could answer, but the sound's very muffled because he has 2 layers of skin, like the outer one and the inner one. But yeah, this is a gift to TechChill, and I don't know if you can actually sit on it. I wouldn't suggest it right away. But as we spoke before, that it's possible, and if you guys, anyone from TechChill here who wants to use this chair, we suggest that you get it lacquered first. Then you'll be able to actually use it. So that's pretty cool. I like it.
That's fantastic. Well, I think we're done. We are out of time. We're closing up our discussion here. So please give a huge round of applause to Team Kiwi and to our wonderful TechChill organizers. And feel free afterwards, if you've got conversations, discussions, questions about artists and digital art and NFTs, talk to Arthur or his team roaming around. I'll be out there roaming around as well. Happy to connect with you after this. Thanks for your time and sharing this moment of creation with us here. Thanks, Kiwi.
Thank you.